My warm regards to the participants of Collins Conference 2021. Let me present today's topic, which is the quantitative parameters of Lucy Montgomery's literary style. I am presenting today on behalf of the team of scholars who dedicated to this research, that is Tetiana Shestakevych, Shyyka, and me, the presenter, Nataliia Hrytsiv. To mention a couple of introductory notes, thus the study focuses on the main features of quantitative comparative analysis, as well as on the key features of statistical linguistics used in the consolidated analysis of the English original text along with the translation into Ukrainian. From a statistical viewpoint, in the Anglo-Ukrainian parallel industry, there is no too little relevant research in this area, so the main attention is paid to the works of Canadian writer Lucy Maud Montgomery. The study compares the original document with the corresponding translated text based on software specially designed for the task. In here, we talk about the combination of XML markup pattern, spreadsheet of Microsoft Excel, also Python programming language. Results obtained present data into ratios such as coefficient of diversity, average token repeat per text, the exclusivity coefficient, concentration of vocabulary. It also contains findings on absolute and relevant frequency distribution in source text and its translation. Thus, the subsection preliminary remarks in our full-fledged paper provides a solid rationale for choosing the material presented and methods and approaches applied, whilst at the same time addressing the typological specificity of the analyzed corpus. The subsection on characterization of the framework and coefficients offers an extensive overview of research and practice, peculiarities of obtaining statistical data in fiction, tools used for data processing, and obtained results for further incorporation in linguistic analysis of an artistic text. The subsection procedures and results dwells on the differences and similarities between the original and its corresponding translated text with the help of software exclusively developed for the current work. Conclusions are derived on the basis of study findings. The results of the presented research will be of use for text attribution, language learning, and translator training, as well as statistical documentation of Canadian literary style in Ukrainian translation, which has never been done before. The research under discussion has certain deliberate limitations. It depicts statistical parameters data, convergent and divergent, of the original text and the translation. Thus, on the basis of a novel by Lucy Montgomery, our research bears the intention to verify absolute and relevant distribution, probability measurement, also number of meanings, maximal meaning, minimal meaning, range, mode, median, mean, standard deviation, coefficient of variation, standard error, measurement error. Reasoning of the study, right? Thus, in building on the one hand and resulting from on the other hand, quantitative comparative analysis is effective in producing statistical profiles of the author and translator. A Canadian writer, Lucy Montgomery, is chosen for the case study from the perspective parallel translation purpose. The explanation is that it has not been previously studied from the statistical perspective and mathematical linguistics point of view in English and Ukrainian comparison. It is carried out from the viewpoint of statistical linguistics on the content of a digitally processed and marked up corpus of text. Thus, in here, we need to take we need to specify as well that we approach the translated text from 2 points of view, right? One is statistical and another one is of the realization that the translated text is a product, right? Human produced, so to say, human-centered, right? Thus, the translator of the artistic text is still a human being with his or her priorities in the text, right? Having the impact on the choice, on the equivalence level, which will undoubtedly influence the quality of the translation, right? But before we shift to that analysis, we still would like to learn certain statistical profiling of the original text and the translated text and check whether there is a certain pattern in this or that data. Thus, to talk about the typological characteristics, we talk about language data tagging, that is tagging of the text related to the subject up to the expression layer. Then we talk about the deglot, English and Ukrainian analogous texts. Then we talk about full-length text, comprised of the entire source and target text, which produces the holistic picture and evaluation. Writer's Ideolect, that is the text collection, contains the text by Lucy Montgomery and its rendition into Ukrainian. Exemplary, it is designed for linguistic, statistical, comparative analysis of a source and also target text. Collateral, original text in English compared with the Ukrainian translation. Fixed, does not supply a constant refill of many text collections. And that is written, the text collection includes works in written form. In our case, that is the printed and typed version of the original and the translation. That is when we talk about some quantitative parameterization of author style. At first, the text materials have been converted into electronic format by means of the Abbey Fine Reader software. Then the document was saved in docs format. The texts were afterwards normalized in the MS Word editor and proofread for the sake of spelling, punctuation, grammar mistakes. Then structural markup was conducted using paragraph mark, that is P, sentence tag, that is S, and page mark, that is BP. Attention is also given to contrasting source text and target text results on absolute and relevant distribution, and the above-mentioned coefficients, right? Numeric characteristics, that is the number of meanings, maximal meaning, minimal meaning, and so on. Thus, to give you a sample, right, from the presented distribution data, we can see the results of the number of lexical tokens found in the paragraphs of the text. This gives us a clear picture of the overall statistics. Let us, for example, consider the first three figures of the whole source text as compared to the target text data, right? Just suppose we have 9, 13, and 16 in the original text, while we have 7, 10, and 13 in the translated text. It becomes obvious that the number of tokens in the paragraphs of the original text exceeds the number of tokens in the paragraphs of the translated text. It gives the grounds for further philological research on the lexical level while taking into account the context of the compared text. In other words, why the translator shortened the translation, right? And the article of the three co-authors on this research is forthcoming, and I hope will be of interest to you. Thus, we have the visualization of the correlation between the number of lexical tokens in the source and target text paragraphs. The horizontal axis represents the number of lexical tokens, and the vertical axis stands for the number of paragraphs. Later on, we have obtained numeric characteristics of the data analyzed. Thus, in here, we have the number of meaning, which equals to 1,762 in the original, and correspondingly, number of meanings equals to 1,770 in the translated text, right? Then we talk about the maximum meaning, which equals to 690 in the original and equals to 564 in the translation, and so on. We came up with the contrasting table that will make it easier for further analysis and further approach while concluding on this or that data obtained. Thus, next, the distribution data on the number of lexical tokens in the sentences of the text within text chapters shows the whole picture of statistics. To mention here, for example, again, three initial figures of the whole source text and the target text data. As we now may see, the tendency of the number of tokens in the sentences within the original, as expected, also exceeds the number of tokens in the sentences of the translation text. To specify, the translated variant eventually lacks the figure 8 and 9 altogether of the original, which makes it possible to further discuss the loss and distortion of the author's style from translatological perspective, to be researched in the forthcoming articles. The idea is that whether this deviation is caused by differences in the languages, because we do happen to know that English and Ukrainian are not related languages. So is it the structure of the language that influenced this discrepancy, or was it the translator's choice? If that was the translator's choice, right, then what was the reason behind this decision making? Was it because of the strategy of the translator supposed to compensate certain points? Was it because of his creative approach to translation, and many other possibilities in evaluating the quality of the translated text? Thus, in here, we see the correlation between the number of lexical tokens in source text and target text sentences. The horizontal axis here corresponds to the number of lexical tokens, and the vertical axis corresponds to the number of sentences, right? So it makes it easier to visualize the whole picture presented by the numeric data obtained. And to jump to the conclusions, right, thus the presented in the paper are results of absolute and relevant distribution, probability measurement, as well as the numeric data, that is number of meanings, maximal meaning, minimal, and so on, in the sentence, paragraphs, and chapters of both texts, the original and the translation under analysis. At this stage, the study is practical and applied value. We are convinced, however, that further elaborations in this realm of statistically oriented translation studies will prove promising and result in formulating and supporting scientific theoretical hypotheses. Thus, the prospect of the study is to further explore Montgomery's individual style and its presentation into the target language. Our next step is part of speech tagging, which again will give us certain ground to what to pay special attention to while analyzing the translated text on the level of equivalency. We talk about lexical level equivalency and textual level equivalency. Thank you so much for your attention. I hope you will have some questions, and we will be glad to answer them.